This is White Plains Week, the weekly roundup of White Plains, Westchester, and world news. With John Bailey, editor and publisher of the daily internet newspaper White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, WPCNR.com. Jim Benneroff, editor and publisher of SuburbanStreet.com and WhitePlains.com. And me, Peter Katz, formerly with NBC, ABC News, and stations from Boston to Los Angeles. White Plains Week, what's happening, who are the newsmakers, what's in store for the future. The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants. White Plains Week is presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76, Verizon Fios Channel 45, and on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. Now, White Plains Week.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. White Plains, Westchester, and the world. John Bailey, the Citizen Net reporter, with Peter Katz, the anchor for all seasons, and Jim Benneroff is on assignment this evening.
Oh, yes, and John, you want to be sure to remind everyone out there that when you call to make a contribution during our pledge break in a few minutes, everyone who calls will receive a copy of the White Plains Week home game, which comes complete with headlines.
Well, Astorino-Latimer County Executive election in home stretch, and it is fierce, ladies and gentlemen. White Plains Week previews the election ballot for White Plains and three important propositions that are on the back of the ballot. White Plains mayoral candidate Milagros Lacuna campaigns quietly with phone work and touts her labor support. Mayor Roach is confident he has it wrapped up as Hospital for Special Surgery opens at 1133 Westchester Avenue. We'll have Peter Katz coverage of that. Two rental complexes considered by Planning Board on North Ferris Avenue and on North Kensico Avenue. The French-American School of New York site plan for the former Ridgeway Country Club will be discussed Monday night in a Common Council special meeting. No vote will be taken, city promises. We'll have another report on Trump the President this week, compiled by Peter Katz, something you have come to rely on in this past 9 months. Now, we'll have a driver's report on how the new Governor Mario M. Cuomo Bridge feels when you drive over it, and this spares you the expense of going over it to try it. We'll have Dr. Mona Kennedy on People to Be Heard this week, a family medical physician who talks on the connection between diet and the kind of food you eat as the cause of chronic medical conditions. Ghost has 5 more performances at the White Plains Performing Arts Center and has it all. Natalie Weiss, Stephen Douglas, Chemistry as Molly and Sam, and A-Train rumbling through the city center, a mystery, a thriller, a must-see, WPPAC's best production ever. The Battle of White Plains will be observed at Jacob Purdy House Sunday from 10 to 3, complete with traditional Revolutionary War reenactors creating a camp for all to see. Do not forget the Library Gala Saturday night, and the school district holds its first community budget forum early this year on Monday night at 7 at the high school. And now we go to the White Plains Week Willow Newsreel March of Time. It's the March of the Press Releases, the Parade of Press Conferences, as George Latimer battles Rob Astorino for county executive. And the big issue, of course, Peter, you have a report on that.
Well, John, the race for county executive does continue to heat up as Election Day draws closer. There's been a steady flow of in-person campaigning, direct mail literature from both sides, and negative commercials on cable TV in which the candidates attack each other as being crooked. Democratic candidate State Senator George Latimer alleges that incumbent county executive Rob Astorino really wants to run for governor against Andrew Cuomo, and that's what he'd be consumed with if he's reelected, and not running for Westchester County executive to run the county. Astorino denies this.
What I'm saying is there's a stampede of candidates who want to run for governor next year in New York, and I would support the best candidate who wants to run. The state, as we all know, is messed up, thanks to the George Latimers of the world that keep taxing us to death. So yeah, the state needs to be fixed, but I don't have to be the person to do it.
He tried to tie you in with Trump. Do you have problems?
You think?
Do you have problems when Trump does things like saying, "This is the calm before the storm"?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't agree with Donald Trump. I'm not Donald Trump, by the way, and people know who I am. But, you know, what George Latimer is trying to do is make this a national campaign instead of focusing on issues like taxes, like the economy, like growing jobs that matter to people here. And so he'll keep saying Donald Trump every 3 seconds because that's all he knows to do, because he hasn't put a vision forward of what he wants to do as county executive. But you know what? What matters to people here are taxes and jobs. And he's not talking about them because he can't. Now, he's hoping people do a protest vote against Donald Trump. But you know what? If they do, the next morning, Donald Trump is still going to be president, and George Latimer is going to raise your taxes.
Playland did not come up.
No, I know.
Is that now an issue that's on hold? As far
No,
as
Playland's going forward. The engineers, the architects are meeting. There's about $30 million in projects that will be completed, or started next year. So everything is moving along. I think Playland's not being talked about so much because it's progressing. It's a done deal. It's moving forward.
Astorino has accused Latimer of not paying real estate taxes. Astorino says that he owes those taxes on a house in Rye, which his wife inherited when her mother died. Latimer explains that the charge is false. His mother-in-law's former house is not his, and he doesn't owe any taxes on it, but relatives do. The Latimer residence where he and his wife live is a different property.
I own, George Latimer, a property at 47 Wainwright Street in Rye, New York. I'm the co-owner of that. The taxes of that property have been paid for throughout the course of time. Whenever he calls me a deadbeat, that's just spin, all right? If you don't own a piece of land, you're not the taxpayer for that property. On my form that shows exactly what I own and what my spouse owns separately, it clearly says my spouse owns a house. She inherited that house from her mother. There was some transaction that was done. I was not a party to it. I was not a signatory to it. And there is now a family dispute over that house. While that family dispute is playing out, it is not played out in court. The fact that it hasn't gone to probate is fine. It isn't a matter yet that has gone before a judge. It is trying to be negotiated outside of that. While that is going on, whatever the obligations of the assets of that house are, will be resolved. When that's resolved, all the obligations will be met, including paying of the taxes. By the way, I've already had conversations with the people in Rye City Hall just to let them know that this is what's playing out. There's no intent to not pay those taxes. But let me tell you this. For Rob Astorino, after 8 years as county executive, to try to make that the cutting reason why he should be reelected, that's a joke. Because when he talks about the fact that he held the line on taxes and that he's cut your taxes, he's frozen your taxes, he hasn't. Look at your tax bill. Look at your 2011 bill, look at your 2017 bill, and compare them. If the 2017 bill is the same as 2011, then you won in the game. But we've seen 20%, 30% of the people for which there are significant increases in taxes. Now, Rob's personal property taxes actually went down. All right, so he's a winner in the way he structured the game. But I can tell you plenty of people that I know in my home community of Rye City where their taxes went up 20%, 30%. That's the true story of what's happened these 8 years, and it ought to be reported that way.
So I guess we're getting closer to an election, you think?
Yeah, it is, but he has changed his tune because he said, now he says it's 20 to 30% have gone up. Now, we all know that every community taxes differently and it's different tax rates. It's very interesting.
Well, it all has to...
He's probably right on the 20 to 30%, but Rye is really wealthy. So
It goes to the value of the total tax base which is attributed to a particular community.
Right.
So each community can vary in Westchester. Some communities can see their taxes go up, others can see their taxes go down, others can see their taxes remain steady. It's a complex thing, but again, you know, if you want to know where you stand, you do have to do that comparison.
Absolutely.
Take a look at an old tax bill, take a look at a new tax bill,
Right.
see what happens.
Absolutely. Now, let's take a look at the election ballot that you'll be facing on November the 7th. Up front, you have the county executive actually, they have the state Supreme Court justice in the first column. Then we have county executive, county clerk, county court judge, family court judge, county legislature, and mayor. This is the White Plains ballot, and councilman. And that's the way it sets up. But on the back of it, you have propositions which you should not pass up. Proposition 1 is, should there be a constitutional convention, yes or no? And this is a Pandora's box if it passes. You never know what the legislature will compromise and do. And so that is your choice there. Shall we revise things? Proposal number 2, an amendment which would allow the court to reduce or revoke the public pension of a public officer who is convicted of a felony that has a direct and actual relationship to the performance of the public officer's existing duties. Shall the proposed amendment be approved, with the courts making the decision as to limit the pension? And the final one is a proposition affecting forest preserved land across the state, allowing towns which have no other land to use forest preserve land to address specific public health and safety concerns. Now,
or recreational concerns, like opening them up for passive and sometimes somewhat active recreation.
On the other, I mean, the Adirondacks, for example, it's such a beautiful, beautiful preserve in its natural state, and I would hate to see it exploited. Okay, now the campaign for the mayor's office has sort of died out a little for Ms. Lacuna. She put this slide out just today by email touting her labor support. But meanwhile, Mayor Roach is confident, and he expressed that confidence at an 1133 Westchester Avenue opening of the Hospital for Special Surgery. Peter.
Well, I had an opportunity to chat with him after the formal event, and he did express confidence. He said the election campaigning has been going very well. He's very pleased with the reception that he has received as he goes around from event to event in the community. But if you or a friend or family member ever falls victim to a sports injury or something else which leaves you hobbling around with a bone or joint problem or something related to that, there's a new place in White Plains where you can seek treatment.
The Hospital for Special Surgery unveiled its new 50,000 square foot outpatient facility at 1133 Westchester Avenue in White Plains on October 18th. The nation's oldest orthopedic hospital is based in Manhattan, with outpatient locations in the city, Long Island, New Jersey, Stamford, and now White Plains. The Hospital for Special Surgery's president and CEO is Louis Shapiro.
This facility is spectacular. Obviously our newest, largest facility with room for expansion up there. 25 of the best and brightest physicians at HSS will be spending time here. Very sophisticated, advanced rehabilitation services to take care of kids and adults, to keep them well and to take care of them if they get injured. Advanced diagnostic services so people don't need to travel. Really just a remarkable facility.
Dr. Brian Kelly is the Chief of Sports Medicine Services.
The ground floor performance and physical therapy area is absolutely amazing. It's 10,000 square feet of state-of-the-art equipment that will provide not just rehabilitation from injury, from surgery, but also provide a lot of preventative injury strategies to try to prevent people from having trouble. We have a plan to have a really robust concussion program here. One of the biggest problems that we're facing in youth athletics these days is how we're managing concussions. There's been a lot of highlight on this in the newspaper and the press with contact sports. And our plan is to have one of the most accessible and highest level of cares for concussion in both pediatric, adolescent, and professional athletes.
Dr. Andrew Pearl is medical director at 1133 Westchester Avenue.
And we're going to have a lot of services here that you may not think about with physical therapy. We're going to have nutrition. We're going to have concussion management. We're going to have return to sport programs. We're going to have safety programs. So we want to keep our kids on the field and out of the doctor's office. They're going to have advanced imaging here. For those of you who don't know, people come from all over the world to come to the city to get an MRI at HSS. And we're bringing that technology here, so you don't have to schlep into the city to get your MRI or to get your X-ray. And I think that's a really great service that we're providing for the community.
White Plains Mayor Tom Roach welcomed the Hospital for Special Surgery to White Plains.
Congratulations on your judgment in choosing White Plains. You're back in a winner. Just a couple things that are happening now. We're about 60,000 population. We have about 4,000 units, apartment units in the pipeline. Very low crime rate. 34 minutes to Midtown out of our train station. Coming up on a major MTA investment in that train station and a major transformation of the entire area. We just finished a study. We put out a request for expressions of interest to developers. We got 9 responses, which is tremendous. We don't have a waterfront, but as one of the other mayors said to me, you have 287 front and I'll trade you tomorrow. So we do what we can. But anyway, welcome. We're very pleased to have you. And I've been a semi-competitive runner for almost 40 years, so my knees feel good today, but, you know, there is a limit.
Then came the ribbon cutting.
Now, 1133 Westchester Avenue is owned by Robert Weiss, who is a developer, and he has done a lot in the way of taking old, somewhat decrepit corporate parks and
Done very well
transforming them into new uses. Roach did point out that the city a couple of years ago changed the zoning out there to permit additional uses to what had been exclusively a corporate park area.
Yes, one of the real efforts of the Roach administration to revive that moribund stretch. Now, how do I go to that hospital? Do I need a referral, or do I just walk in or call them up?
I don't know.
Don't know. Okay.
I don't know.
Good. Okay, so now, Peter, it's time for the segment we always wait for, Trump the President.
Oh, brother, is it time for it this week? And by now you know that 4 American Green Berets were killed in an ambush in Niger about 2 weeks ago. The next day, the White House drafted a statement for President Trump to make on that, but he never made the statement. And to the time we're recording this, no one has said why he kept it quiet. For 12 days, he never acknowledged that the 4 American soldiers had been killed. At a news conference, he was asked if he had talked with the families of those servicemen because the story got out. But he didn't answer that directly. Instead, he made the false claim that he was the only president who ever called the families of all servicemen killed in the line of duty. Only after he made that false claim did he finally call the families of those 4 Green Berets. He reached the widow of one of them, Sergeant LaDavid T. Johnson, when she was in a car with other family members and Congresswoman Frederica S. Wilson of Florida on the way to claim Johnson's body, which had just been flown back to the U.S. Sergeant Johnson, as a youth, had been in a program run by Congresswoman Wilson to help minority youth prepare for college, vocational school, or the military. And the Congresswoman had been a longtime friend and mentor of the sergeant and a longtime friend of the family. So there was nothing unusual about her being with the family in their time of grief. Now, she said that when Trump called, he was on speakerphone in the car, and she went public revealing that what Trump said was insensitive, uncaring, and showed no sense of empathy or sympathy, and Trump made the widow cry. Congresswoman Wilson said Trump told the widow that Sergeant Johnson knew what he signed up for, but when it happens, it hurts. That's a quote. The others in the car confirmed that Trump said it, but Trump denies saying it. During a photo op at the White House, he doubled down on his denial and dared Congresswoman Wilson to say it again, and he'd produce proof that he didn't say it. Now, as of today, when we're recording this, she stands by her allegation, and Trump has not produced the proof he claimed he had.
Didn't say what that Congresswoman said. Didn't say it at all. She knows it, and she now is not saying it. I did not say what she said, and I'd like her to make the statement again, because I did not say what she said. I had a very nice conversation with the woman, with the wife, who sounded like a lovely woman. Did not say what the Congresswoman said, and most people aren't too surprised to hear that.
What is the proof, Mr. President?
Let her make her statement again, and then you'll find out.
She is saying that you said this.
Okay, let her make her statement again, and then you'll find out.
Why did you make...
Now, of course, Trump was lying about being the only president to call the families of all servicemen killed during his term of office. Now, yesterday, his chief of staff, General Kelly, was sent out to a White House briefing to try to back up Trump's claims, Trump's side of this story. But actually, what Kelly did was to confirm that Trump was lying when he said he didn't say it. Because what Kelly tried to do was to explain away that because of the way Trump said the words he said, it didn't quite come out right and may have left the widow with the wrong impression. So when Trump says he didn't say it, the Congresswoman says he did say it, the family says he did say it, and General Kelly says he said it, who are you going to believe? The Washington Post did some research and found that President Trump has called fewer than half of the families who lost servicemen in the line of duty. They also found that in June, Trump called the father of a serviceman who had been killed and promised to help the father financially by sending him a check for $25,000. Between June and this week, Trump did not send the check. When the White House was asked about it by a reporter, they eventually came back with the answer, you ready for this? The check is in the mail.
I used to get that a lot when I was in the freelance business.
Whatever happened, we might ask, to that $1 million Trump promised to contribute toward hurricane relief in Texas?
Well, he should throw that million down to Puerto Rico, really.
The Senate has passed the budget, $4 trillion. That sets the stage for consideration of the Trump tax cut. A 9-page outline exists, no legislation yet, and the outline indicates the middle class and poor will have higher taxes, the wealthy and corporations lower taxes. The Trump administration has developed a plan in secret, and now it's out, to shut down the Veterans Administration. Privatize it, they say. The former President George W. Bush spoke in New York yesterday and was highly critical of President Trump without ever using Trump's name. He blasted Trump for the rise of nationalism and bigotry and hatred shown to immigrants. Former President Obama, speaking in New Jersey, also attacked Trump yesterday without naming him. Quote, "The world counts on America having its act together. The world is looking to us as an example. The world asks what our values and ideals are, and are we living up to our creed," said Barack Obama. Trump said he gives himself a score of 10 out of 10 on Puerto Rico hurricane relief. But the facts show it's 2 out of 10 on restoring electricity, because 80% of the island still is without power. It's 3 out of 10 on water, because 70% still do not have clean water. And 2.5 out of 10 on phone service, because 75% of the cell phone towers are still out. Attorney General Jeff Sessions testified before the Judiciary Committee and spent most of his time avoiding answering questions about the Trump campaign's involvement with Russia. After an expose by 60 Minutes revealed that he was working for pharmaceutical companies and distributors of opioid drugs, Pennsylvania Congressman Tom Marino's name was withdrawn as Trump's nominee to run the Drug Enforcement Administration. North Korea's deputy UN ambassador warned Monday that the situation in the Korean peninsula, quote, has reached the touch-and-go point and a nuclear war may break out at any moment. Last night was the Al Smith dinner in New York. It's a tradition in political and social circles. The New York Archdiocese runs it to benefit its Catholic charities. Last year, both Trump and Hillary Clinton attended. Trump was widely criticized for his jokes, which were not very funny, according to most people. and some mean things he said during his speech about Hillary Clinton. And this year, no Trump at the Al Smith dinner.
Well, you know, it was appropriate that he not come. You know, because there's nothing funny anymore about Donald Trump. Speaking of funny, and terrible instead of funny, what's happening in Puerto Rico is awful. 30 days since that Hurricane Maria had hit. The schools are still closed. Puerto Ricans are leaving the U.S. This is a FEMA failure. The U.S. Armed Forces have just not been used effectively. If Puerto Rico were Greenwich, they'd be up and running in a week. This is negligent genocide. Thank the Lord for the Associated Press reporters in Puerto Rico getting this information out. And
well, it's not just AP reporters, it's other reporters, but it's also volunteers from this country who have gone there. They are, some of them are working to bring back.
I didn't say they weren't, it's just that there seems to be a lack of organization here.
They are reporting that really there are some people in desperate
yes, they're
states.
Eating rice and fried eggs. There's asthma because of the haze of the generators. It's awful. And there are citizens, folks, really. Now, locally, some good news in White Plains. 2 rental complexes are considered by the planning board. One is at 21 Ferris Avenue. That's a picture of it. And it was presented by an old friend. Next slide. Mike Chismondi, who is the architect. And up on Old Kensico Avenue, North Kensico Avenue, they are looking at putting 2 complexes on the north side of Kensico Avenue. And on People to be Heard this week, we're going to have Dr. Mona Kennedy. She appeared last night at 8. She'll be on again at 7 on Channel 76. And she talks about hunger and how treatment of your diet can really fix chronic illnesses. She's pioneering this, and it's a very interesting program that you should really pay attention to. It could solve a lot of problems. Now,
you need to mention, John, also that these programs can be seen on the internet.
Right.
At whiteplainsweek.com. You can look at any of the White Plains Week shows or these People to be Heard interviews, and also on wpcommunitymedia.org. Yes, and
I have to give a shout out to Ghost, which premiered last weekend. I saw it. It's a terrific show. That's Natalie Weiss in the lead playing Molly, and Steve Douglas, the romantic lead, Sam, and they actually stage a beautiful A train going through the city center with all the pyrotechnics you would expect from Broadway. Great show. See it. John Bailey, Peter Katz. Good night for White Plains Week.
This has been White Plains Week. News and commentary about White Plains, Westchester, and the world. The views and opinions expressed on this program were solely those of the participants. White Plains Week, produced by White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, and presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76 and Verizon Fios Channel 45. You may view White Plains Week anytime on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. For White Plains Week, this is Peter Katz speaking.